Project Synapse. We've got John Pinard, we've got Marcel Gagne, we've got me. We've been getting together for God knows how long in AI years. We were going to talk about robots this morning, and we will, but every time Marcel gets an idea for a show, Sam Altman unleashes something new. So we have to talk for a few minutes about what's happened on image creation.
It's not just them. Remember, Google did some cool stuff as well. Nobody remembers.
One of the things I did this week was one of my shows was I start out with, if you're in marketing at Google, you've just got to be banging on the table or drinking heavily, because they come out with their Gemini 2.5. I watch a lot of internet reviewers to see what people have to say. You also gains a lot of stuff. So I'll go through a lot of these things. They're all going, greatest thing ever. This is incredible. Oh, over there, OpenAI just came out with something new. We did this on the 12 days of shipments. Google had just announced an incredible model, just absolutely knock it out of the park in terms of what they were taking on Sora at the time, which was really incredible. And then out comes Sam Altman and dances and sings for 12 days. And now, this thing, I wonder if they do this, because that announcement for the image generation was really quick. There were no warnings of it. There was just this little announcement. Oh, we're going to have a live cast. Nothing extraordinary. I'm just going to set the internet on fire.
I think that's part of the approach. It's, oh, look at us. This is so underwhelming. We're going to basically upend the entire internet. Would you like a coffee before we get started?
I'll bring in three guys. I'll bring in three guys who look like they're in their 20s. We'll talk about how we've just changed the world. So one of this thing is, and I don't know if I said this, I'm always worried about going fast to air. The news has got to get up pretty fast. I write the show, I get it up there. And I discovered Studio Ghibli, or I think I hope that's the right pronunciation, but it's something I never knew about before, and probably 90% of the planet didn't know about before. It's this semi-anime studio and a Japanese animator.
The studio is responsible for movies like Princess Mononoke and some great stuff, actually. It is a visual style that happens to be the thing at the moment. I saw one of the stories this morning. Can people stop pushing all this Studio Ghibli AI slop? Please. It's the thing today. Give it a couple of days. Nobody's really going to be thinking about this anymore. They'll have moved on to something else. And we had the same thing when the generative AI models first came out a few years ago. There was one fantasy artist. I can't even remember the name of the artist at the moment, but everybody was copying that particular fantasy style when the first open source image generation programs came out. And now nobody really thinks about that anymore. It's the thing of the week. Studio Ghibli and whoever may be riding on either outrage or excitement that somebody is paying attention to their particular artistic style at the moment. I'm not even getting into the questions of copyright here, but it's the flavor.
You aren't, but many are.
It's the flavor of the day. You know what I mean?
But it isn't.
And it is because, like you said, wait till tomorrow. Something else will come out that'll completely change things.
But nothing has been as revealing or as in the forefront since that New York Times article, where they produced a New York Times article from just one prompt to ChatGPT. This has been everywhere. By the way, it took me a while. Every default image I was getting, because everybody in the world was playing with this, every default image I was getting, I had to say, I don't want this stuff. I want something photorealistic. I've been playing with this thing too. Marcel, you are playing with this right now, right?
Yeah, I've already spent way too much time on this. You must have seen some of the images that I posted.
One of our friends is stuck in a TV, putting a wedding ring on him. Yeah. I did a picture of me, but my wife said it looked creepy. And I went,
when you should have said, no, hon, that's the actual photo that I was basing it on.
Me and Elvis playing together. And it was well done. I've got me with my guitar. He gave me my accurate guitar playing with Elvis. And one of my friends said, I remember that. One of you is really talented. Great line. But you can do anything with this. The astonishing thing for me was it can actually do text. Maybe there were other generators that could do text. I could never find one.
Not even close to this. You can generate full pages of text with this thing, and it does it accurately. On the day that it came out, I was picking up my son. He stayed after school because he and his girlfriend were studying for chem tests and meeting with one of the teachers. I questioned nothing. I just made stuff. He's 17 years old. I just accepted. I was going to go and pick him up. And while I was waiting, he sends me a message and he says, can you pick us up at the school an hour after the bus would normally pick him up? I decided that I wanted to send a message that said, call me when you're ready and I will rescue you. I thought, I'll just put this to the test. And I created a mouse in a superhero costume.
I saw that,
with the words perfectly expressed on it. He said, oh, it does. And of course, growing up in this world, he goes, oh, that's pretty cool. It's doing 2D really well these days. So I send him another one and I said, turn this into a 3D image of this mouse. And it kept absolutely all of the aesthetics perfect. Created a 3D rendering of this thing. And that's part of the amazing thing about this.
Which, if you're a Google marketing person, you got to be killing yourself. Google had just done that 2 weeks ago with being able to keep an image stable and make changes to it. Because everybody's had this where you get a perfect image and then you go, okay, I want to change one thing. So you get another totally new picture.
But what Google did wrong is they put it behind AI Studio and made it so that only people in the US could play with it. So it wasn't available to the general public unless you had a Google AI account and you were in the United States. And what did OpenAI do? They said, oh, by the way, everybody gets this.
A big piece that came up this week was an interview I heard with Sam Altman that almost nobody saw. He talks about what OpenAI is and what job he wanted to do. And he has come out and openly said, OpenAI is no longer an AI model company. It's part of what they do, but there's going to be so many AI models out there soon. It's now becoming a consumer company. And when you think about it, he mused about what he wanted to do with his career. He signed up to be someone heading up an AI research lab, and now he was head of a consumer company. He's the best marketer in the world right now, second only to Steve Jobs. And this is why Google's losing. There's something to do with technology, but Sam Altman is not there building rockets. Like, he's not in the back room going, oh my God, here's a mathematical formula for this. And no, he's out there
promoting the hell out of the company and everything they do.
Absolutely. Which has got to send
part of that wonder. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's got to send Satya Nadella into next week. We paid you $13 billion and we've given you all this stuff. And by the way, your company might surpass Microsoft. Oops.
Yeah, there is something about Google used to be a company that seemed to take a lot more chances once upon a time. They've gotten old and they're worried about tripping on the floor and breaking a bone or whatever. They seem to have forgotten that there is something fun and exciting about this stuff that they could roll out. They did this with Notebook LM. It was understated, but they made it available to everybody. Go and play with this thing. But what's happening here is on the day or like within a day of this being released, I noticed that one of my bitches that I've had for quite a while with Google is their unwillingness to discuss anything that is even remotely political or even remotely possible of offending someone. For instance, if you were to ask who the Prime Minister of Canada was, you could do a Google search and find out for yourself, or who is the current president of the United States. It has just been driving me nuts because these are basic facts. They're not politically charged topics. Who's in charge is a basic fact. On the day that the visual model was released from AI, the new image model, they took off those guardrails.
And that was the amazing thing. This is, again, not technical. This is marketing genius. Altman saying, we're going to let you have as much fun as you can. So I checked it out. I had a picture of me playing guitar with Elvis. I beat Trump at golf. The look on his face was really quite astonishing when he saw me take it straight down the fairway. I want him standing behind me, admiring me. I was expecting it wouldn't produce the image. This is super marketing.
Let me try to paint a picture of just how amazing this is, besides the obvious consistency. I have told it to create a 4-panel cartoon, putting together a little script of what's in the speech bubbles, and it does the whole thing in one pass. I've done a few of these things. I did a 6-panel one. It was an experiment where there are 2 vampire bunny rabbits that are discussing going into town and attacking the villagers, and then they go into town and do silly stuff like that. And of course, they're all young emo types sitting around at the carrot bar, and it's undead, you mean uncool.
Yeah.
And perfect. It does this stuff beautifully.
Yeah.
That cartoon was hysterical. It was great. Is that in our public Discord channel?
I don't know what it is. I'll check it out and I'll post it.
If you were out there and you were not in our Discord channel, and then you have, shame on you. because you get this thing that is filled with Marcel's little pieces he puts in. He goes back and he bangs out stuff on AI all day. You'll get every meme, cartoon, and everything. And
Every one of
why
them.
couldn't you suffer like the rest of us and get all this? No, I'm not kidding you. This cartoon, there's only certain things you can describe in an audio program, and even the video. I don't change the YouTube much for editing just because of time to get it there, but I might edit in some of these pictures just so people can see them because they are astonishing. That cartoon strip was just amazing, taken from a picture to a 4-panel cartoon strip. It was wild.
And
Is that one prompt, Marcel?
That was one prompt. One prompt.
Oh my God.
A single prompt.
And it had an evolution of a character, 4 panels, and humor.
Now, mind you, I discussed it up front. The prompt that I wrote, I said, I want to create a cartoon where I've got this scene happening, blah, blah, blah. So I gave it all of the framework that I wanted to build something off. But then it just went ahead and built it. And it seemed to understand the style that I was trying to capture. And it was just, it's truly phenomenal. There is, I think, really low understanding of just how world-changing this is. The idea, yesterday, another friend of ours was talking about Canva. I was told how wonderful Canva was a little over a year ago by this friend. I paid for a 1-year subscription, and I found it one of the most frustrating and useless things to work with. Its layout features are terrible. Its templates are terrible. Even when you're paying for a premium plan, which I think was $140 a year, there are a bunch of things that are behind it. And then you can't print anything. You have to take the graphical image, import it into a word processing program, resize it, and do all these things so you can print it. It is a horrible thing. And now I can go into, sorry, Canva, but you got to do better. And now I can go into OpenAI's image generation and I can say, this is what it wants. It creates this perfect thing. Yes, I still have to put it into something or print it or whatever, but I can just do it. You can't print from the Canva interface.
Yeah.
So this is world changing. This is going to affect so many industries.
There are going to be a ton of packages out there that people used to buy for doing these specific things that are just going to go by the way of the dodo bird, because why pay for those when you can do it straight out of OpenAI?
I was thinking that yesterday, I actually asked the question on one of the AI specific groups that I hang out with. I asked the question, like, I'm seriously wondering why I wouldn't dump a whole bunch of these other things and just pay $200 a month to OpenAI at this point.
We're going to get there very quickly, quicker than you might think. Seriously, OpenAI will drop their price. They'll find a price point for this stuff. They're not stupid. Once they decide they're going to make money, they don't have to yet. They just got another $40 billion from SoftBank. And this is what I mean about Nadella's got to be sitting there going, what did I do? What did I create? What have I done? Because he gave him about 13 billion. Now the Japanese are going to give him 40 billion.
And that's the thing tied in with point, Marcel, is that it gets really annoying having 10 or 15 different programs and you go, now, which one was it that I used for what? And a lot of the things that I used to buy these other programs for, you can now do in OpenAI. So why not scrap those, put the money into OpenAI? I pay the $20 a month plan. I'm not ready to do the $200 a month. But if they came out with a plan, like a home user plan that was $50 or $100, I might consider.
Yeah, I'm with you. At $100, I would probably be jumping on it today.
If they gave me the super AI at $100, I would clean out almost now. See, I have another program. I might go for the $200 a month program because I have a program that produces thumbnails. It costs me like $80 a month, and it does the thumbnails and the SEO for the YouTube show. Okay. And I'm looking at that going, I got out of the Canva cult. I didn't subscribe, thank God, because, and Canva is a cult. Everybody who's used Canva says, you got to use Canva. You got to use Canva. Yeah. I think it's so they won't feel alone in their frustration. Somebody hooked me up to their account. I tried it out. I went 15 minutes and I said, why am I doing this? I'm going to spend so many hours of my time trying to figure out how to do something, and then I can't do the last piece of it.
Yes. I was in the same boat. Somebody had told me about Canva. They said, oh, you got to use it. It's great. And I've used Photoshop for years and thought, you know what? How tough can it be? I got into it. I'm like, what? And I think I used it once and I stopped using it.
You ever notice how Canva cult sounds like cargo cult? It's some kind of weird pseudo-religious thing.
No, I actually didn't until you started talking about it. Yeah. My prediction is that Marcel will have a cult. I think that's coming. And I think he's going to be king of the robots. Did anybody see that segue? Wasn't that good? Wasn't that good?
Are we a segue in a robot?
We're going to get to the point of the show.
I'm just going to regress for a moment longer because I want to just, before we walk away from this, I want to talk about Sora briefly. Because we talked about the sad thing that is Sora.
The lunch bag letdown. Yeah.
Hang on, no. Yeah, I agree with you, but hang on a second. If you go to these Sora, so if you have a pro plan, you get the $20 a month, you can go to Sora.com. Sora actually has the image generation stuff built into it now. Okay. So this stuff is starting to be fluid across both things. And the OpenAI thing doesn't let you do the videos yet, but of course you can do the videos in Sora. And I noticed that some of the restrictions on Sora have been lifted. But then you couldn't do videos with real people. Now you can. Now they still have some of the issues with physics and so forth that VO and or VO2 does better than they do, or Kling does better than they do. But it's already improved, and they haven't said anything about it. I went to look at it because I had been told that you could use the Sora interface. In fact, for generating images, the whole Sora interface and web page is probably a better place to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Partly because you can just say, then take this image and then create a video from it and so on. So there's some cool things that you can do by using the Sora.com interface. And that is actually one of the reasons why, like you, Jim, I'm sitting there going, could I get rid of a whole bunch of these services and just use that? Because if Sora could be just that tiny bit better and fix a couple of these physics things that it does, we might be there. That might be everything I need in one place. We're getting to the state of commoditized AI, and then it just becomes a question of which brand you like.
And unique interfaces. I'm sitting there on my phone this morning trying to figure out how to text, to do something I've done one time in the past 8 months. And now I've got an issue. I need to do it, and I can't. And so now I got to sit and figure out which app, what did I do? Why can't I just ask the phone, just do this for me? And I honestly think we're on the edge of that new interface, which is just do this for me.
The one thing I wish OpenAI would do a better job of is consistency across the platforms. With the image generation, it came out and I was sitting there. I do a lot of stuff with ChatGPT on my phone. I'm trying to get in to do this and I don't see it here. Of course, you can't do it there. You can't do it on the app on the Mac. You actually have to go to the website to be able to use the image generation. And so I don't know why, but it would be nice.
Apple, you need to do this on, you can do it on Android, baby.
Oh, he finally won one. There's one in a row for you. Yes.
The unusual thing is that if you look at the guys from OpenAI, whenever they do their presentations, they're always doing it on a Mac. I would have figured the Apple platforms would have been the first place they would have enabled it.
No, Apple is actually difficult to develop apps for and to be integrated with the platform. It's a tough slog. That's why you see all this stuff come out in the web, first of all. But if you've got something insecure and trivial like Android,
they let anybody in.
Yeah. They'll go clean another 200 apps out of their app store with all of the...
Anyway, so the beauty of all these things, of course, is that instead of having to buy a whole bunch of different tools, you can just buy one master tool that does it all for you, which is actually what robots are for. See what I did there?
Yeah, that's good. Another attempt at segue. One ring to rule them all.
Transition.
A robot. Ring begins with R. Robot. Nobody said we were really good at these transitions. Let's get back to the point of the show. And that was, I think we all came to talk about, but again, you can't control what happens in the world of AI. And I think this is important for us to talk about because this has been happening under the surface. You brought this up a couple times, Marcel, in terms of we need to be watching out what's happening with robots. I'll give you my intro to this because it freaks me out right now. If you're watching Canada right now, and I'm going to use the political situation, not to talk about politics, but to talk about the world. Everybody at this time has seen there's big tariffs on auto production. If we're going to move all that auto production into the US, if we have these tariffs and all that sort of stuff. And I've been saying for some time, take your eye off that ball. I know it's terrible. There are job losses, there's immediate things, but in 3 years, there won't be auto workers. And people can say to me, you're nuts, but I'm going to tell you, if we're a year away from AGI, and we don't need AGI for robots, you need something that's as smart as the AI we have today, because it can drive a car around downtown Los Angeles now. If you've got that, and what's happening in robotics, we may actually put a couple of clips into the YouTube version of the show or some links so people can see what's happening. Robots are absolutely capable today of building a car. They're capable of replacing every job on that assembly line. No question at all. And I wondered why they hadn't done it. I was watching this guy. I don't know if you've seen the Figure robots. It's Sam Altman invested.
Those are the ones that are... Yeah, no, Figure is actually the company that is working in the BMW car assembly plants at the moment. Their humanoid robots are already working at BMW.
And capable of building a car.
They're not doing the whole thing at the moment, but they are doing some amazing things. And of course, they can move in ways that humans can, but they can also move in ways that humans can't, which means they're able to more efficiently move things into position. They started working at BMW just a few months ago. The estimate is about 100,000 of these robots working on assembly lines around the world in the next 4 years. That's 100,000 human level employees. And that's just from one company.
I was watching the head of Figure on an interview, and he said, I could sell 1 million robots today if I could produce them. The only limitation is going to be the production. Their Figure 3 robot that's come out. Figure 2 would knock your socks off. It could pick up a child's toys on the floor. It can generalize and do a task that it hasn't done before. And that's why I talk about ubiquitous AI. They invented their own AI for this. They were using OpenAI. And then they said, no, we got to have a better AI for this task. And they came up with something called Helix, compact enough to run these robots in local time. You've got to see them. If people haven't seen the demonstrations of this, it'll knock your socks off. And I don't mean a robot doing a backflip. That's cool. Getting a one-time trick that you can do is cool. Watching a robot fold clothes and pass them to another robot and look at the other robot so the other robot gets the signal to pick this up from them and then put that away. That's something.
I was always amazed. If you go back 25 years ago, anybody remember Asimo?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
The Honda robot. That to me was always really cool. At that time, it was so far ahead of anything else that you would think that would put a little bit of AI into it, and it should be leap years ahead of everything else. But has anybody heard anything about Asimo lately?
Well, but that's because Asimo is a kind of a blocky form factor. It's a cartoon level form factor. It's not really effective at doing the sorts of things that people want it to. Let me tell you about another robot from that period, IBO, the robot dog. That robot dog may not have been a big thing in the rest of the world, partly because it was like $2,500 or something like that. It had a low-level AI built into it, as in it could recognize its owner, it would play with you, it would cock its head if you scratched it behind the ears, all this sort of stuff. Today, in Japan, a huge culture built around these robot dogs is still in existence, even though the robot dog stopped being produced however many years ago. The company is still supporting them. People dress them up. People have names for them. They come home, they excitedly wag and bark when we walk into the house. It's a question of what it is that you want this thing to do. And a dog, of course, you don't need to have long philosophical discussions with them. You want them to roll over and bark and adore you when you scratch them behind the ears.
I just figured with Asimo, you talked about you got Future 2 and wait for Future 3 to come out. I would have thought they could easily have modified Asimo to Asimo 2 that was more streamlined, to me, miles ahead of anything else that was out at the time. And everybody else seems to have leapfrogged over it.
But that leapfrog took 25 years or 2025.
This is the thing. How do people go bankrupt? Slowly at first, then quickly. And technology is exactly the same way.
Yep.
Slowly, then quickly. And that's one of the things why I'm talking about what will happen in society will happen much more rapidly once it starts to roll. Once they can roll these robots off the assembly line. Because we've talked about Figure 1 and Figure 2, and now Figure 3 coming out and the production issues. What about what's happening in China? They're building astonishing robots in China. Now you outsource not to China, but to Chinese robots. And this is the piece. But I want to go back to this whole thing, and we'll talk about the economic impact of this in the world. I keep saying that we've gotten sidetracked with AI because we think about consciousness and awareness. The fact is, we've gotten to the point with agents now, and I think our definition of agents was something that could execute an autonomous task without human intervention for a period of time to get an outcome. I think that's done. We're now in refinement. All of that development's gone into this. Same thing with robots. All of the parts that you need to be able to pick things up, to move, to walk. Remember when walking was difficult for a robot?
Yes.
No longer. All of these technical problems have been solved. So you've got the dexterity issues gone. You've got a compact AI now, whether it's Helix or whether it's some of the new things coming out of China. There's a compact enough AI that these things can be autonomous. And then the third thing, and this is the cool thing that's happening, is their ability to generalize, to be able to take on a new task that they haven't learned before. And that's coming. But even then, that would make them fit for the home. You could use a robot in your home. Industry's way easier. If there's an auto worker, don't hate me, but there are things people do. They put a door on the car, tighten up bolts, install a particular part. What was the big thing about assembly lines? Hard to do, boring, predictable stuff like this all day. But you couldn't do all of it with a robot, because what if you're a quarter of an inch off? Or what if this happens just a little? Or how do you change from this car to this car? Do you have to change the programming? That's done. These robots, a robot that could pick up a kid's toys in a house and deal with things like that, can deal with the changes on an assembly line. It's just the way it is.
One of the things that I was talking to Jim about before we started recording was when I was doing some research about robots for this show, I got into assistive technology, the replacement of the seeing eye dog for blind people, the elderly that needed assistance in walking. I was saying to Jim that you remember when your kids were young, they used to have dome that they used to push around that had a ball, and it would have these balls inside the dome that would pop. It used to drive parents nuts.
I have one. I still have one.
Okay. I had seen something. There's a conference. It's called the Assistive Technology Conference, run out of California State University, Northridge, every year. They have something that looks very similar to that, but it's for people with vision impairments. So instead of walking with their walking cane, they have this thing, and it can actually steer them around impediments and things like that. When I hear robots, I automatically think of things like Asimo or Future 2, those types, or these big, huge behemoths in the automotive industry. But there's all kinds of other areas that robotic technology is going and can go to consumerize it. I love the idea of the assistive technology.
Right? You mentioned the idea of a robot built for a specific purpose. That's really what you're describing here. There are arguments, of course. We've got dishwashers, washing machines, and we have Roombas. And in fact, we have robot lawnmowers.
Sell your Roomba stock with your Canva stock today. Here's what we don't normally give investment advice, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with Jim on this, because the thing about the humanoid form factor, which is interesting. And one of the questions, of course, is why do you need robots that look like us? The best reason for having robots that look like us is so that you don't have 250 million weird-shaped robots all over the place. Humanoid robots could take your existing lawnmower and mow your lawn with your existing lawnmower. It could wash your clothes with your existing washing machine. It could vacuum your floor with your regular vacuum cleaner. One of the most fascinating companies in humanoid robotics is a company called Neo. Sorry, not Neo, but the Neo line of robots. And it's a company out of Norway. The first robot they put out was like a couple of years ago, and it was a humanoid robot on the top, but it was sitting on wheels. And they developed a walking humanoid robot, and they had a video where the robot walks into the room and does something, and then the woman gets up and it hands her bags and stuff like this as she's getting ready to go out. And then they stand side by side, and the robot puts its arm around her. And the Neo robot is interesting because it's unlike a lot of the other ones where you've got like just this exposed metallic body with plastic panels or whatever. This thing is actually clothed. So it's sitting in a fabric, like built with a fabric around it. And the latest version, and this would be a great one to put in, by the way, Jim, the latest version is for the Neo Gamma robot. The video is fantastic because it incorporates this thing into the home as something you accept as being part of your home, picking things up, moving things around, helping to bring in the groceries when it meets you at the door. It's the next iteration of this Neo robot. What's really cool about it is you see it vacuuming with a regular vacuum cleaner.
I want to take this into what the bridge between what you two said. The human factor is also there to make us more comfortable. And that is one thing. The second piece is when you get down to what we needed in AI, we don't need consciousness and awareness. We need the illusion of humanity. And that's what's going to drive us towards these assistive devices. I don't dispute what you're talking about, John, but these are going to be portions of the technology that'll be easy to run off. You need something that sees for you, gives you directions, that guides you, not an issue. We're going to be in mass production of robots, and they'll probably be produced by robots, by the way. So if anybody's looking for a good union job on the robot assembly line, forget it. It ain't going to happen. You have that illusion of humanity, and that's enough to make us comfortable with it. I'm actually thinking about this, and again, I want to emphasize this. We are not more than 3 years. We're a production issue away from robots taking jobs in manufacturing. That's all we are. It's a production issue now. It is not a technical issue. The home, different. The home is, you've got to have all kinds of things, like you've got to have huge amounts of safety. A robot cannot tip over a candle and miss it and set the house on fire.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of safety issues and things like that in a home. But you take a look at that and you say, sorry, I don't want to say forget people with disabilities. I think that's going to come in very rapidly. But I know I look really young, but I'm 69 years old. I live in the country. I know what you're thinking. How can you look so young? But I wonder, as I go out and shovel 20 centimeters of snow, how much longer I can maintain a house in the country like this. It turns out I think I've got to maintain it for about 8 more years because there'll be a robot. The pricing of these things is incredible. Right now, you can have a robot, if you take the current prices for Figure 3 and what they're projecting, about $30,000 US. So you take that for a lease over a period of time, what, $300-400
It's cheaper than
a
buying
month?
a car.
It's cheaper than buying an American car right now. And it'll be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
You've got a robot you can buy for what, $300 a month? What's that, $10 a day? 40 cents an hour? This is astonishing in terms of ability.
I'm going to hang on John's comment about assistive devices and yours as well, Jim. I have a 21-year-old, almost 21-year-old son with autism who requires supervision on a regular basis. He's not the sort of person who's going to be able to take care of himself without having somebody to help him. I'm getting older as well, and it could be years before there's a place where he can go, like group homes and stuff like that are 10, 15 years out at this moment. That's what the waiting list is like. Having a humanoid robot that can wander around and help out and keep an eye on things, him, is a wonderful idea. We have an aging population, but there are people out there who are aging, and they are going to require assistance and help. And you only have so many people to jump in and fill those assistive roles, especially if you have a large aging population. So these things are coming into the market at precisely the right time. This is really something that we need at the moment. The human form factor, the biggest thing beyond comfort of thinking, oh, this is like a human-like thing, I think is just the fact that it can function in the environment that we humans can function in. I think that's the big thing. In terms of looks, people are a lot more comfortable if the robot has a face. All of the companies designing these things that just have a visor with nothing on the front, you want to have eyes and a smiley face or something like this. People actually like that.
Marcel talked about his son, but it goes well beyond that. My father passed away 6 years ago of cancer, but he wanted to stay in his condo. He did not want to go to a hospital. He did not want to go to long-term care. We paid $8,000 a month for care workers to stay with him and help to look after him. Jim, you talked about $30,000 for a robot. That would have paid for itself in 4 months.
And think about this, and this is why I keep saying I understand. I don't want to seem insensitive about the problems of today. we're going to have economic problems in the world for the next couple of years. And they're going to involve many people losing their jobs and all of that. This is just a precursor of what's going to happen in the future. I'll give you an example right now. There's technology for turning a person in a hospital bed. If somebody's ill and need to be moved, you need at least 2 or 3 people, most of whom are trained. There is now a Canadian invention that helps turn a person with 1 person. That's a major accomplishment. We will be slow at incorporating that into our hospitals. I'll be talking about this in 2 years, and some idiot in some purchasing department's going to be going, oh, I don't know, maybe we should move a little further with this. Why don't we wait till there's an American product? That's the Canadian way. It just drives me nuts that you have this innovation.
Or they'll sell it to the Americans and then we'll buy it from them.
In robotics, we have an economic challenge as a nation, and other nations do besides the US and China. If these robots are doing all the work, how do you make money to pay for the services for your citizens?
You can't tax a robot.
So there's a whole economic challenge that's going to come in, and countries that own that technology are going to be in much better shape than countries that don't. So there's going to be a whole shakeup in the world in terms of those that have embraced not just AI, but robotics. I've been saying this for some time. It's not AI, it's AI plus robotics. AI is the brain, robotics is the ability to act. And once you put those two things together, it doesn't matter if it's a little bit fuzzy. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit difficult. It's going to happen. The refinement is just the issue.
Yeah, and embodied AI is the trick here. The fact of the matter is we've got things that can respond to, frankly, just about any kind of a request. It understands normal human speech. Hell, the thing that we started out with, talking about the image generation thing, being able to describe what it is you want and having something that understands what it is you're trying to say well enough to generate an image that reflects what you were thinking of is amazing. And embodied AI is obviously the next step to making these things happen. You could train a robot with repetitive tasks like we talked about in industry. But as soon as you embody a large language model in these things, you have increased the capabilities dramatically. And one of NVIDIA's big pushes, Project Groot, or whatever it's called, I love that name, GROOT, is meant to train vast armies. I shouldn't use the word army here because that is pretty scary. It's pretty scary. But to train these things, because AI is becoming commoditized, we're entering a space where people are starting to create their own models for their own robots. By the way, you were mentioning a Canadian company, Jim. There is actually a Canadian company called Sanctuary AI, which is out of Vancouver, BC. They are Canadian. I'm going to send you a link in the chat so you can take a look at it. We are building humanoid robots in Canada. There's a company in BC, and they have been doing a test in something like 150 retail stores using these humanoid robots to do things like moving.
They did the test with Canadian Tire, Mark's Work Warehouses storage, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah?
I missed that. I wanted to see that, but I missed it.
Yeah.
We have that kind of talent in the country. And we've got a company in BC, and they're like full range of motions, the fancy finger manipulations. I sent you a video clip showing what this robot is capable of in terms of its motion capabilities. So there are tons of companies out there that are building these things. And while you guys are looking at that, I'm just going to take you through the landscape briefly. One of the companies has this strange little humanoid robot called Digit. It's from a company called Agility. Digit is already in a lot of factories, including, if I remember correctly, Amazon. It's capable of picking up boxes and moving them around and sorting them. And of course, Marcel is going through the motions physically on the screen here. There are a bunch of these things already deployed. We talked about 1X and the Neo range of robots. Those are different in the sense that they're aiming for the home market as opposed to the industrial market. Tesla is working on their Optimus robots. By the way, they're named after Optimus Prime.
Transformers. And if they build it with the heart of Elon Musk, then you don't have to bother with any of that stuff I talked about, the humanity of robots.
I'm surprised it's not just one letter or one number that they've called it.
It was going to go with something like Transformers. But what's amazing is this company went from zero to a robot that's basically production ready for the factory floor in less than 2 years. So this stuff is moving at an insane rate. Now, Tesla, I think, is hoping to sell these things. You mentioned a $30,000 price range, or somebody mentioned a $30,000
Jim
price
did.
range. Jim did. And that's what Tesla is aiming for. Of course, the Figure 2 robots are the ones that are actually working at the BMW factories at the moment. Those are a big deal.
Their target price is the same. They're aiming for the 30,000.
A lot of companies are aiming that. One of the big differences is Unitree in Japan. And Unitree is going for something in between. They currently have a humanoid robot that stands like 5'3". It's one of the smallest humanoid robots. And I've seen videos of people you can already buy these. They're $16,000. So you can actually buy one of these things already. And I've seen videos of people going shopping with a couple of these Unitree robots at their side, carrying their bags for them as they're going from store to store.
People who think this is
China, here we go with the Chinese again.
Yeah, people who think this is fiction. There are robots that are actually out there functioning. People are taking them shopping. If it's a $30,000 price point for an American robot, and it's a $16,000 price point for a Chinese robot, and it can do all the same things, things are going to get very interesting.
For Canadians, we might have a free trade agreement with China coming up.
We could put more tariffs in place and make sure that the Chinese don't deliver their robots.
Well, when you get down to this, there is going to be some sort of tariff of robots producing things.
Yeah.
There's going to be some sort of tax on a robot producing. There has to be. You have to generate money from somewhere. Like I said, the economy, I don't know. I'm not an economist. I do play one on the video from that. But I'm looking at this and going, my God, I have no idea how we're going to make this transition. But let's pull this back and say, where do we get to in the short run for people who are listening to this and working in industry right now? What do they need to be thinking about? I think in areas like places where there's a scarcity of labor, farming, places where you cannot find people to do technical jobs. And believe it or not, there's an Edmonton company that is looking at robots in construction. And when you think about it, even we talk about generalization, there's some very predictable things. If you've ever driven through a new neighborhood in Toronto or any suburb, you're going to find one thing interesting. All the houses look the same. And all of them have the same floor plan. And there may be 3 floor plans that are out there. It's going to be relatively simple to get industrial robots to build most of that frame and the structure and all of those things for a house. And again, difficult to find people who are going to do that type of work. This is going to change the nature of a number of industries in a short run.
In Ontario, we have a huge problem with a lack of homes. If you can build them faster and cheaper by having robots. Now, my son's in the trade, so I don't really want them to be taking jobs away, but that does give you the ability to potentially build these things faster and cheaper.
In terms of specialized robots, we have these big 3D printers that can essentially put the bones of a house together in a day or two. The technology, here's that classic line, the technology already exists. It's just not widely distributed yet. We're entering the stage where it will be widely distributed because we will have machines building the machines. The more machines you've got building machines, the faster we can move this stuff forward. Which, again, I understand this brings a problem of how do we pay people? What do people do while all this work is being done for them?
That's an issue. But like I said, bringing it into the present, when we talk about how you start to look at these things, the places where you can't find people to work, they exist. A lot of them exist.
They do exist.
Especially agriculture. We bring in a tremendous amount of people to do agricultural work. I don't know whether the dexterity is there for this, but I'm not sure that it isn't. Mining, dangerous places where you have to work. So in the immediate future, I would start to look at some of the areas because they will come up for sale. There is going to be an issue in buying them because there won't be enough production. Large companies will have locked in a lot of the production. I'm not sure that you won't be able to buy Chinese robots in the near future. And maybe this Canadian company and a few other companies may also be able to get into production. I think we'll see some of those things. Mark's Work Warehouse has already had them in folding clothes and taking care of those sorts of things, which is astonishing, that folding clothes and putting them away. My wife can't get me to do that. Wait a minute. A robot, we could get one. And I guess, where do we get to in making this something interesting or useful for people? I think we've talked about some of the places where you can look for the use of robotics in the next little while. I think we should be looking at some of the issues you've talked about, John, and that's assistive devices. We have a lot of people who can't, and this is a compassion move, if nothing else. During these snowstorms, people who have to use a wheelchair to get around, they're stuck. They can't go shopping. They can't do anything.
I'll give you another example. There's a lady that lives up the end of our street who, the nicest lady you ever want to meet. Her husband passed away right at the beginning of COVID, and she lives alone. I live in Pickering. Her son lives in Port Perry, which is an hour away. He comes down as often as he can, but I'll go over there and help with shoveling the snow and things like that. But she's essentially a hermit, especially in the winter. And just having a companion robot, somebody that can converse with her, she can chat with while she's doing the laundry or making dinner, or make sure that she's okay, help her up the stairs or anything like that. That, to me, that would be a huge sell.
Oh, yeah. And if you got to the $300-400 a month price point, what would it cost to put somebody like that into an assistive home? A decent one? What is it? $8,000 a month or something? I think
that's for the person, right?
Yeah, that was $8,000 a month to have a PSW living in with my father. He still had to pay for food and condo fees and everything else on top of that. I think if you went to a retirement home, you're looking probably in the $5,000 a month range. If you go to a long-term care that's government assisted, you're looking at $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't want to do that. As I said, my mother-in-law is in her 80s, lives at home alone because she doesn't even want to move into a condo. She still lives in a house. So from a comfort factor for the children, knowing that there is an individual, be it a robot, that could keep an eye on her, help her out with things. If she's having problems trying to figure out how to work the TV or whatever, all of that stuff could be done by having a humanoid robot.
I have a friend who's actually a cameraman. He's one of my oldest friends in the entire world from when I was like 13, 14, 15 years old. Chris is a Steadicam operator. He's done Blue Jays games. He travels around the world and does hurling, a whole bunch of other sports events. He used to be the guy at the top of the Sky Dome.
Oh my God.
Camera that was pointing down from the top. He's done some really cool things that way. But a Steadicam is an amazingly difficult and heavy piece of equipment to carry around. And while Chris is a little younger than I am, he's starting to find that this is a really hard thing to be doing, despite the fact that I think he'd like to continue doing it. In the chat, I just posted a video from a couple of days ago, which maybe we can include in the show notes. It's from one of the new Boston Dynamics robots, one of the new Atlas robots. It's actually, Boston Dynamics.
That was the name I was trying to remember. Boston Dynamics.
The old Atlas robot was that big giant thing that did the parkour videos and stuff like that. It was all hydraulic based. This new one is fully electric and it has some insane motion ability. We think about the idea of moving like a human being, but there are times when if you're walking forward and you need to do something, it'd be nice if you could spin your torso around 180 degrees, do what you need to do while you're continuing to move forward, or maybe turn your head behind you just to make sure that there are a bunch of things that would be useful to do even in a humanoid body that obviously we can't because we're not built for that. But robots like the Unitree robots and robots like Boston Dynamics' Atlas are able to do these weird, wacky motions and so forth. The cameraman video that I just uploaded shows some of these weird, wacky motions that let you do amazing things that you might not be able to do as a human operator. And yes, you don't want your son to be out of a job. I don't want my friend Chris to have lost his job because there's a robot out there doing these things. We're going to have to come up with a way to either make sure that robots augment people or make sure that people aren't left starving. In other words, there have to be programs in place that support people at a time of rapid industrialization by robots and replacement by AI models. We have to think about these things. Should we touch on a few of these before we walk away from this topic? One of my favorite things I've talked about for a long time is the concept of universal basic income. Basically, everybody gets a check from the government, enough to cover food, rent, and essentials. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor or whatever. Everybody gets it. If you're making lots of money, the idea, of course, is that beyond a certain point, you're going to be paying taxes on this stuff. So if living in a comfortable middle class home isn't enough for you and you need a bigger place on a bigger lot and drive a BMW or something like that, obviously you're going to be you're going to have to find some way to make that money, and you're going to be paying to be in that higher bracket. So that's one of the suggestions. And there have been pilots in various parts of the world that are looking at that. And in fact, some of the proponents of it are guys like Sam Altman. Even our buddy gone rogue, Elon Musk, has spoken of universal basic income as one of the things that's necessary. There's also the idea of a negative income tax, where the government tops up your income, a reverse tax return. Another one is not universal basic income, but universal basic services. So you're not handed money necessarily, but you're given free access to essentials like food, healthcare, education, internet, that sort of thing. So public transit, you don't get a car out of the deal, but you get free public transit and so on. The theory then is that you can increase what you can do with the cash that you do make. There are public housing and food programs, sometimes called modern welfare. One of the weird ones is you tax the robots. Yeah. When you're bringing these things in, the idea is that if a robot takes your job, it has to pay a tax, which helps to support things like universal basic income or universal basic services. There are a bunch of ideas in place to try to support people in those times, but I want to leave it with one of my soapbox things, which is that I do believe we are creating a world of abundance. In fact, we're already living in a world of abundance, but we still live with a mindset that things are supposed to be scarce. In fact, we create artificial scarcity all the time to raise prices and support higher prices for things. It's frustrating as hell. There are piles of perfectly good products that are destroyed every year and sent to landfills. Clothing, every year, there are millions and millions of pounds of perfectly good, brand new stuff sent to landfills because they didn't sell out. And of course, if you just give them away, or if you sell them at too low a price, it devalues the next year's worth of the product. So there is incredible, but there's more than enough food, more than enough clothing, even more than enough housing. We have empty houses in North America, like the US and Canada. There are more empty homes, apartments, and so forth than there are homeless people. If you take a look at all of the homeless individuals in Canada, there's 4 times more empty homes and apartments than there are people sitting on the street at the moment. So we don't need to build the houses. We need to figure out a way to put the people that are on the street in the existing properties that don't have anybody in them at the moment. Abundance is not a problem. We have insane amounts of abundance. We just have to shift the societal mindset from the idea that scarcity is the way that we keep the wheels of the economy, capitalism and consumerism going, and figure out a way to take advantage of this stuff and distribute it to people who need it. You don't need to give everybody a mansion, but we have all the capacities and we have all of the resources necessary to make sure that no one goes hungry, that no one doesn't have a home, that no one freezes to death in the winter. We have to pivot to a new way of thinking. Robots and artificial intelligence are driving that point home. You can have these things making all of these things possible for you. We just have to accept it and shift our mindset.
There is an economic challenge we are going to face. And there's 2 things about it. One is that if we're going to talk about the cultural pieces of this, I don't know how you sustain capitalism. And I'm a capitalist. I actually believe that if there's an incentive for people, we are creatures of incentives. And if there's an incentive for us to do more, gain more, innovate more, we will follow it. We do have people like Banting and Best in Canada who were researchers who gave away the formula for insulin to the world because they thought it was a good thing to do. There are people who work for intrinsic motives. We're a long way from making that a complete cultural shift. And right now, we're moving more to an oligarchy of several very rich people who want to control everything, controlling AI. We've talked about robotics and physical manufacturing, but when most of your production is digital, 10% of the Canadian economy is manufacturing. Maybe another 15% is the extraction of natural resources. About 70% is pure services. If you could provide most of those services digitally, then you're generating most of the wealth of the economies now in services. The future's here, it's just not evenly distributed. There are people going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that it continues to not be equally distributed. There's no reason for anybody to go hungry. There's enough money. There's enough food. We waste it. But we work on the capitalist system of unequal distribution. I am a capitalist, but once you lose fairness, once you get past a certain mark, and we're long past it, the system will break down. The final piece I'll leave with is you can own all the robots and they can make all the cars, but there's nobody to buy the cars. We're going to have some figuring out to do economically in a relatively short period of time. My fear is that's going to lead to some real conflict in society. I'm almost glad that we have a Donald Trump to break the world economy early, because it's going to force us to think through issues that might have caught us by surprise.
It's that comment about living with space age tools and stone age brains. I think I sent you this paper. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. I was totally into it. The idea of how quickly the future is coming. I mentioned it in the last podcast. The fact that we're moving so fast at the moment that we're seeing like 10 times the changes in a year that we would have seen in 100 years ago. And because of that, we're having to adapt at a speed that is unprecedented. Although I hate to even think about these things, I don't like the idea that we have to break things in order to fix things. Cruel, heartless. It seems like we always have to go through these violent changes. We're awful in that respect. We as a species don't want to fix something until it's broken or until we know that it's about to break. Things are changing at such a rapid rate that we have to adapt at a speed that we're not built for. We have this notion that because we always did it this way, then this is the way we're going to do it in the future. And clearly that doesn't work anymore. Is Trump and his MAGA cronies the answer to this? No, it's not, because they're going in with hacksaws and chainsaws. They're not even thinking about how they're doing this. They're just tearing things apart with the idea that once it's all torn apart, maybe we'll build it back into something. Or maybe they frankly just don't give a shit and they just like breaking things, which is unfortunately what I think is actually happening. But you do at some point have to tear this stuff down and build something new. We should have been building this something new all along while it is falling apart, because it is all going to fall apart without some major changes. But that doesn't mean we have to be cruel while these changes are happening.
You've talked about this idea of us having primitive brains and space age tools. There's a book called The Fifth Discipline, came out in the 1990s. And the essence of that book really was, humans are not good when cause and effect are separated by a period of time. Our brains work well when we see a problem and there's an immediate solution. Where there's a long term between the cause and the effect, we suck at it. The experiment is try adjusting the shower. Nobody is good at adjusting the shower. That's a time lag from movement to response of about a half a second. And we're terrible at that. You extend that to something like the time it takes for climate change, or the time it takes for us to evolve our economy. We're really bad at cause and effect. The chainsaw type of thing we're experiencing it now, at least two pieces of our society. One that wants to destroy government because they think if they get rid of government, if they shrink it to nothing, we'll be better off because it will be taking less from us. At a time when there's no answer other than we are taken care of by benevolent billionaires who will take care of us. You just replace one structure with another, one that's elected by people and one that has money. You can't have a capitalist economy if you can't have trading of labor for money. I don't know how that exists. There's a cheerful thought.
I have a ridiculous amount of faith in human beings, our capabilities and our ability to actually come up with solutions. We've been doing it since the dawn of time. A lot of what we've been doing is experimentation. We try this for a while, it doesn't work out, we try something else. The only problem is we used to be able to try something, work with it for 100 years or 200 years, and then try something else. And now we're at a stage where we need to try something maybe for 6 months and then pivot and move to something else. And that's where it gets really hard. I think that this is where these machines that we're building and these intelligent tools that we're building could help us out if we don't freak out on the idea that, because they're not going anywhere, they're not going away. If we lean in and take advantage of the fact that we've been given these tools to reason things out in a way that you're not normally built to reason, I think we might make it through all of this.
The idea that we're forced to look at right now in Canada and in Europe and in Japan, perhaps, is the disappearance of 100,000 jobs in my home province of Ontario. That could happen in 2 weeks. We could be shut down in as little as 2 weeks. And there are experts who are saying this. One of the good things that we might take away from this is by putting that in our face and making us conceive of that world, we may start to think this through and be able to find a way to make it fairer. Whether it's universal basic income, a different economic structure, we're going to have to figure this stuff out more quickly now. And we may dodge this bullet. Somebody may come to their senses and realize this is just crazy. We got to put this train back on the track. There may be an adult that comes into the room. I hope there is. We've all had to stare at this now. This may be one of the greatest things for the AI revolution, is us being able to actually say, we better think about this. We need to think it through. It's no longer a technical issue. The technology's solved. It's no longer an issue. You can't put it onto maybe we'll get this great thoughtful creature that is self-conscious and aware. It doesn't matter. This is fake it till you can make it. And that was one of the things I thought about. We should be closing the program. Version 4.5 from OpenAI was thought of as a failure. I think everybody's thought of it as a failure because it was really empathetic and really human in its responses, but really bad at logic. We're confronting our own humanity in looking at machines. That's scary.
Honestly, would you trust a human to do these things?
Only because you have to.
I'm not sure about Musk some days. He's halfway between. Given my choice between who's out there running the world and a robot or an AI, I'm willing to do anything you ask.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
I, for one, welcome our robot overlords, right?
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Let's welcome them all. We got to go. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.